Hey, are you hungry? Well, you're in luck. Meat and Three is back for season 16. I'm Taylor Early, and we've got a whole new batch of reporters I am so excited to introduce you to.
Hi, there. I'm Elizabeth Fisher.
Asha McElroy.
Sam Girardi.
Jessica Gingrich.
Hannah from Wisconsin.
I'm a swing dancing audio engineer.
I am a future registered dietitian nutritionist.
I'm from New York, and I love rice and beans.
My favorite food of all time is a shrimp burrito.
I love watermelon.
We've also got a bonus podcast for you called Behind the Internship. 3 of our reporters will take you along to show how they developed stories for this very show, Meat and Three.
Hi, I'm Danielle Flitter, a plant-based chef from Philadelphia, living in Mexico City.
I'm Sophia Hooper. I'm a bartender based in Portland, Maine.
My name is Addison Austin Liu. I am a chef and food journalist from Salt Lake City, Utah, and my favorite food is Peruvian.
Rice and beans.
Hand-drawn noodle soup.
So tune in to enjoy a square meal for your ears. And I hope you saved a little room for dessert.
If your restaurant wants to put the best on the table, look for food with the New York State Certified Seal. It's food that is grown right here. Learn more at certified.ny.gov.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network. We're a member-supported food radio network broadcasting over 35 weekly shows live from Bushwick, Brooklyn. Join our hosts as they lead you through the world of craft brewing, behind the scenes of the restaurant industry, inside the battle over school food, and beyond. Find us at heritageradionetwork.org.
Welcome to The Line. I'm your host, Eli Sussman, co-owner of Samisa Restaurant in Williamsburg. So happy to be here this morning, coming to you live from Heritage Radio Studios in Bushwick, Brooklyn. A little shout out at the beginning of the show to remind you that you can download all the episodes of The Line and all your other favorite Heritage Radio Network shows on iTunes as well as Stitcher, and also they all live on our heritageradionetwork.org website. So if you're looking for a specific episode, maybe the 10,000th episode that we just recorded, or any of the thousands of other episodes that have come over the years, you can go to that website and you can listen to any of them. Let's get into today's episode. My guest is Jean Adamson. She's the owner of Vinegar Hill House. She's led some of the quintessential New York restaurants that have inspired many other restaurants and are now considered iconic institutions. In New York City, she has worked at, just to name a few of them, Tribeca Grill, Balthazar, Frank, Freemans. In 2008, she opened her own restaurant, Vinegar Hill House. It's located in Vinegar Hill, a beautiful, quiet area of Brooklyn, right on the East River. It's adjacent to Dumbo. If you've never been there, you should definitely go and check it out. It's a magical place that is entering its 9th year of business. Mm-hmm. Which is an incredible accomplishment for any restaurant in any city. But we're talking about New York City here, where unfortunately we're seeing restaurants closing after 2 months of being in business. So this is really an incredible accomplishment. Jean is here to talk about her past cooking careers. And of course, we're going to talk about Vinegar Hill House. Welcome to the program.
Thanks.
So the places that you've worked at before, they all have a very strong, specific aesthetic. Perhaps you can attribute that to Frank or Keith that run sort of these large restaurant empires. But often they're places that are now kind of over the years have been copied or replicated. So I'll refer to those places sort of as like upscale, accessible, and you can correct me if that's wrong. But I want to know, like Balthazar, it opened in 1997, Pastis, 1999, Freemans, 2004. How do these places, how have they lasted so long? What is special about each one of those places that's allowed them to thrive and survive?
I mean, I think Keith McNally's restaurants were just beautifully designed. Like, you wanted to go into those spaces because it, like, took you somewhere else. And then I think that what I found with the food there is that it was very consistent. Like, so you go into this place, you get that experience that you want, and then also you get the same steak every single time you come. And I think that people want that.
And the sort of the general consistency that you're talking about with a Keith McNally restaurant, how is that accomplished in the kitchen? I mean, for people listening out there, you go to Balthazar, and you go there in 2005 and you go there in 2010, like, things are going to be the same, pretty much. How do they accomplish that at a restaurant like of that size and that does that amount of covers?
I mean, I don't know. Being a line cook there, you just did the same. It was repetitive. You did the same thing over and over and over. Like, there was specials, but they were like the same specials that were like year to year, or at this time we do this thing. So I think they also were big enough that it was like everything was in a book and you had like a reference to look at. I don't think that happens as much in small restaurants because you don't have the time or the manpower to create all these documents to make sure that everything is exactly the same all the time. And I think, the chefs there, Riyadh and Lee, who I adore, they were just really good at figuring out, okay, well, so pre-portioning was a lot of the stuff that we did when I was a line cook there, we did 500 covers a night. Like, you couldn't just like wing it. You had to have everything kind of ready to go so that it was like in 2 minutes you could kind of turn out a dish.
There's this crazy article in the New York Times, I think it came out maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I don't know if you saw it, it was sort of like a day in the life of Balthazar, and it went through, it talked about how there's just 2 or 3 guys that peel potatoes, right? And that Balthazar stockpiles potatoes. They buy G-Pod potatoes and they keep them in some warehouse in New Jersey.
That's true.
So I want to know about your personal specific experience there. When you began there, were you used to that sort of like regimented? It's a very corporate cooking environment compared to other restaurants. Can you speak a little bit about that?
I mean, I don't think I was used to that, but I think I quickly adapted to that because I understood that it was what needed to happen in order to get the things done on a daily basis. And so I kind of admired it a little bit, and it was organized, and I feel like I needed that at that time in my life. I needed things to be kind of like, you come in at this time, you do this thing, then you just kind of go throughout your day. I think that kind of, mise en place of your day, like, really helped establish who I am as a person. Like, I think about things in that way at home when I'm folding my laundry. Like, that's kind of what that afforded me, and my brain kind of works that way. So, especially when I became a sous chef there and was expediting, like, organizing things was really enjoyable for me, actually.
I want to talk about you being a sous chef there. You were the first sous chef in the Keith McNally restaurant realm that was a female, correct?
Yes.
Across any of his restaurants?
I believe so. I mean, there was a woman who I think he worked with, Rose, who was one of the chefs at the River Cafe in London that I also worked at. And she was a chef with him, and I can't remember where, but...
Well, let's just say that you were either the first or the second.
Sure.
One of the first. What does that mean to you personally? And also, is there something that... Does it bother you that it took so long, that these restaurants had been open and that a woman had not been in a leadership role there? What does that say to you about restaurant kitchens?
I mean, let's date myself a little bit. This was in 97 or something like that. So it was a long time ago. And I think that, his restaurants were beasts. Like, I worked like upwards of 70, 80 hours a week. So I just feel like... I don't know. I didn't really think about it. I just was like, okay, I'm ready to work hard, so let's just work hard. I mean, I don't think that... I just, maybe the opportunity wasn't there for other women yet. Maybe there weren't enough women in the field at that time that wanted that, because that's common now. Like, you have women in restaurants all over the place, and they're excellent workers. Like, honestly, like some of the best people I've ever worked with. So, I mean, I don't really know how to talk about that. I just... am proud of myself that was an opportunity that I was given. I think it defined me as a person, and he also totally was really good to me, Keith McNally.
How does becoming a sous chef at a restaurant of that size, of that stature, how does that impact your leadership style? I'm curious about, after you were the sous chef there and you moved on and you led other kitchens, what was maybe the biggest professional takeaway from working at Keith McNally restaurants and at places of that size, so that when you ended up going somewhere maybe slightly smaller but also still really busy? I mean, Frank is still super busy.
I worked mostly at Little Frankie's, just to clarify.
Okay.
But sure.
And Freemans, super busy, always has been. Like, the places that you led after that, what were takeaways that made you into the kitchen leader that you became?
I think just being direct, but also being respectful and nice. Like ask people in a nice way to do something for you. Keith McNally's restaurants were big places, but Ria and Lee were nice. They were good bosses. They talked to you. You could go and ask them a question. And so I think being available to people, or even telling people, like, if you don't understand how to do something, come and ask me, and I'm not going to get mad at you about it. I'm actually just going to show you. So leading by example, like, I'm someone who has no problem doing the dishes. I have no problem mopping the floor. But at the same time, I want people to also have fun, because it's hard work.
Did you ever work anywhere that wasn't busy or successful or popular? Because I'm looking at the list of restaurants that you worked. That's unique. You haven't really ever experienced what it's like to be at a restaurant where people don't come every single night. And
we had a little bit of unfortunateness we opened a small space next to Vinegar Hill that has now since closed.
Hillside. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that felt? You had tremendous success with Vinegar Hill. It's been open a very long time.
Yeah.
People love it.
Still doing great.
And it is, I think we can talk a little bit about Vinegar Hill in a second, but let's talk about, how does that feel as a business owner? You went from growth to growth, success to success, consulting to opening up your own restaurant, being a chef of Freemans. How does that feel to have something that you put a lot of effort into not exist anymore?
It's heartbreaking. It's like, I think the hardest part for that was my partner in life, Sam, like designed that restaurant, and it was like so beautiful. It was like the most beautiful space. And I think that it was also a learning experience, because it wasn't set up to not be successful. We're a destination restaurant. Vinegar Hill, we're the only thing in Vinegar Hill. And we kind of became competition for ourselves. And I think that even though we tried to diversify what we offered or have it be a little bit different than Vinegar Hill, it just wasn't different enough. Like now it seems like Cafe Jeton has taken over that space, and I think that they might do really great there, and I think that we could complement each other in an amazing way. So it's just hard, because it's like, I don't see it as not being a success. Maybe it wasn't the right time, or it wasn't the right space for that concept. So it was more like a learning experience, but it was definitely super sad. I was like really bummed out about it.
Let's transition from that not necessarily working out at the right time to Vinegar Hill being at the right time.
Yeah.
In a place that I think if you would have brought somebody there in 2007 and said, let's do a restaurant here, they may have thought that you were a little bit crazy. It's still isolated. It's still sort of by New York City standards in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
For people that haven't been there, it's on a side street, a cobblestone side street that, what's the closest train? A 10-minute walk away?
Yeah,
a
the
15-minute walk?
F train to York Street, which is the first stop in Brooklyn from Manhattan, by the way.
But when you look on a map, it's right by the East River, it's by Dumbo, it's by the bridges, it's in this beautiful area. The thing that always strikes me about Vinegar Hill, and it was one of the first restaurants that I went to when I moved here, is that it has an internal heartbeat. The restaurant has its own shape and form and function to it that is the aesthetics and the food feeding it, but also there's something about it being sort of like a magical cottage that you stumble into on a side street. Is all of that intentional? Is some of it come over time of being part of the fabric of the neighborhood? How did you and Sam build out the space and build out the menu so that Vinegar Hill became what Vinegar Hill is now known as, and what people try to sort of replicate as being like this? It is such a Brooklyn restaurant now, but how did it start off?
Look, basically what happened was I lived in Park Slope at the time, and my landlord, I'll move back. Sam and I both worked at Freemans together, and he was helping Tavo build. They were expanding. They've, I think, expanded 3 times now, but it was their first like expansion, which is when I kind of came on, because they were going from like a 40-seat restaurant to an 80-seat restaurant, and they had a consulting chef, and they're like, maybe we need a full-time person, and that was me. But anyway, so in that process, I met Sam, and we kind of like became friends, and one day there wasn't a lot of work to do, so we ended up driving around Brooklyn and talking about the places that we like. Went to a shawarma place out on 86th and Bay Ridge. Have you been to that place?
I haven't, no.
And then we ended up in Red Hook before Fairway was there, and it was just those like ferry cars on the out on the water over there. And then the last place that we were was in Vinegar Hill. We'd both ridden our bikes down there on our cobblestone streets, and we were just like, oh, this is like an amazing neighborhood. And I'm not kidding. The next day, my landlord from Park Slope calls me. He's like, hey, I have like all this space in Vinegar Hill, and I have this carriage house. Maybe you would like to move. So he was just trying to like, I mean, I had a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment in Park Slope that I was paying like $1,800 for, which is super cheap for what it was. Maybe you want to move to Vinegar Hill. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I was just talking about this yesterday. I rode my bike down that day. I saw the carriage house, and I was just like, this is insane. Like it's, I don't know if you remember seeing that, but it's behind the restaurant. So I was like, yeah, I'll take it. Like, I'm moving here, no problem. But then I kind of talked to Sam about that, and I was like, this is really weird, like, how this happened. Should we go, like, ask him what other spaces he has around here? Because we were really, like, into that neighborhood. It's beautiful. And so, like, then a week later, we, like, approached him about maybe some rental space for a restaurant. And it just kind of, like, all fell in our laps at that point. And we were super nervous because we were like, how are people going to come here? Like, we know that this neighborhood, like, there's telephone poles there. There's, you know, like, it's you feel like you're in the country there. I honestly think it was a lot of luck. And I don't know, just kind of like developed from then. It was someone's apartment. We like took everything out of it, but we put like a lot of stuff back because we didn't have any money. We built the restaurant. Like we were just kind of scavenging for stuff to kind of create a feeling. Like a lot of panels came down and got painted and were like the wall to give texture to the wall. It was just kind of organic. And
so you opened Freemans in 2008?
I opened Vinegar Hill in 2008.
Sorry, 2008. And when did you leave Freemans in order to start working on Vinegar Hill?
I think it was like 2007. I think there was only like a 6-month period where we were kind of building stuff out, maybe even a little bit less.
And you opened, and what happens once you open this restaurant in an area that probably a lot of people in Brooklyn had never even heard of before? They said Vinegar Hill, I'm not really sure where that is, or, you know, how do I get there? What's the first 6 months feel like and look like for you?
Magic. Like, it was amazing. I think also we were, you know, having worked in all of these Manhattan restaurants where there was such competition, and then trying to open my own restaurant, like basically with the money out of my back pocket and not knowing what I was doing, we really like just leaned on our friends. And it was amazing. Like people that would just help us, like Zeb from Union Pool. I remember talking to Carolyn Fidanzo, or all the guys at Roberta's, like really helped me out. Brent from the Meat Hook. Like these were all people that like just kind of came together to like help us figure this thing out. And we never had that community before. And I think that because of that positive start, it felt positive in there from the minute. I mean, from the get, like all the people that worked there were my friends. And it was just like super fun. We were having like the best time ever. And I think that because of that, it just pulled people in. It was like just pushing forward, like this positive happiness. And so because of that, we were cranking like from day one. Like we ran out of, I mean, I was like getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning every day to like cook food. The menu was like tiny, but we ran out of food every single day. Like I was like, I 2 cooks. Like I don't know what I'm doing. So I think that just like having that positive start, like really actually just spread really good word of mouth, like right from the beginning.
Once you were a year in, do you get comfortable as a business owner, as a restaurant owner? At what point, you've been around now for, by the standards of New York City restaurants, for an eternity.
Yeah.
Have you ever gotten comfortable with the feeling like we're here to stay? Do you ever feel untouchable, or do you have, conversely, do you have days where you're still freaking out, even almost 10 years in?
Every day. It's the restaurant business. I think every day is a challenge, and every day, like, I'm always trying to push forward growth. Like, I don't want to stagnate, and I think that you can do that really easily when you're kind of resting on, we're here, it's fine, like, everything's fine. Like, I don't want to do that. I want to continue, like, trying to explore what food is now, like, because food now is totally different than what food was then. I mean, I had, like, spaghetti and meatballs on the menu, and, like, that's not what we serve at the restaurant now, and I'm happy about that, you know. And we're, like, now in our, including myself, 4th iteration of our chef, and each time I'm like, it's a new experience, and you are just trying to give that person an opportunity to do what they think that they can do, you know, and really be supportive of where it came from.
I think something that a lot of people listening, a lot of chefs and people that work on the line in restaurants always wonder is, there's a point where you reach the level where you're in charge of a restaurant. You become the chef, you become the CDC, you're the executive chef. Then there's this whole other transition to where you become the owner. And you move away from the line, and you have to relinquish a certain amount of power and creative control. How do you deal with that as someone who worked for years and years and years cooking every day? Now you're not on the line every single day. You have someone that does that for you. What was that moment like when you transitioned out of the kitchen and said, now I'm more the owner than the chef and the creative visionary behind the restaurant? What did that feel like?
It was hard. It was really hard. And I mean, I still have days where I want to be kind of involved. And I still kind of am involved, but I really try to not discourage the people that are doing all the work from being able to feel like they are getting to explore themselves. You know, I stepped out like probably at like year 2 because I was really impressed with the guy that we hired. His name was Brian, and he was a really good cook. And I was like, okay, like this thing is going to need me, and it doesn't need me to be on the line every single day. And so that was a choice that I had to make. I was like, okay, I'm going to give him this creative freedom in order for me to like learn how to be a business person. And that's what I consider myself really good at now. Not good at, I'm still totally learning, but like I'm a number cruncher now. You know what I mean? I'm a permit filler outer. But I think I also still am super involved with the floor staff and even with the kitchen staff about how I want the restaurant to feel. That doesn't mean that I'm putting dishes on the menu, but it still has a sense of feeling that I want to always be there, that was there from the beginning, I think.
When you say that you're now a number cruncher,
yeah,
I'm curious, what does I know there's no normal day, there's no normal week, but for people that want to hear sort of like the nitty-gritty of the business side, the boring side, the filling out of the permits, where does that take you? What do you do now that you are in charge of the restaurant, but that you're not, picking up dishes every single night?
I have meetings with people mostly, and I mean, we're still always trying to find other revenue streams. I mean, we deliver through Caviar. I do a Kickstarter corporate lunch. I do an Etsy corporate lunch. I am the concessionaire at a playhouse in Dumbo. We're opening a new spot in Dumbo in the next couple of months. So, it's like, I think that actually me being able to remove myself from the kitchen afforded me an opportunity to help my business grow. Because I think that if I was stuck in the kitchen, there was no way that was going to happen. I'm the type of person when I'm working for 16 hours and I'm like head down. So to go back to what the question was, because I got it.
No, I just want to know, like, you as a business
what I do every day.
Yeah, I mean, beyond finding new revenue streams and, expanding the business, which you now have the freedom to do. You have the hours in the day that have been opened up to you. What does that consist of? What does a day-to-day leading a restaurant look like from the books side of things?
It looks a lot like reading P&Ls. You read P&Ls and you read P&Ls with the people that spend your money and you talk about how that's being spent. It looks a lot like making sure that we're DOH compliant. I run a lot of errands for the restaurant to be supportive, to make sure that we have the plates, the glassware, all the things that we need. From a maintenance perspective, I do all of the maintenance, and our building was built in 1890s, so there's a lot of issues that are kind of constantly coming up. There's a lot of people that are looking to me to help them do their job properly, and I really try to be there to offer that for them, because I know that if you're working a service and you don't have any rocks glasses, it can be really kind of annoying. So I want to not have the people that are working there have those issues, make it just as easy as possible to then give the customer service.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be right back with Jean Adamson here on The Line on Heritage Radio.
New York chefs and restaurants are proud of the food they put on the table. And serving produce that comes from local, environmentally responsible farms is a way to leave an even better taste in everyone's mouth. So when shopping for your ingredients, look for the New York State Grown and Certified seal. It lets you know which food is grown right here in New York State, certifying the food that comes from local farms that meet a higher standard. You'll not only be serving local food, you'll be supporting local farmers. Learn more about the New York State Grown and Certified program at certified.ny.gov.
Welcome back to The Line. I'm your host, Eli Sussman. I'm here with Jean Adamson. She's the owner of Vinegar Hill House in Vinegar Hill. We were talking about all of her past cooking experience and what it's like to lead the restaurant now that she's no longer in the kitchen every single day. But now I want to jump way, way, way back to the beginning, to Salt Lake City.
Okay.
You grew up in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
I want to know, what was that like? Were you dying to get out? Was it a super pleasant upbringing? I think, unfortunately, what most people know about Salt Lake City is that it's the home of the Mormon church.
Which I was raised.
Which you were raised. And so I want to know about what was it like to grow up Mormon in Salt Lake City, and how did you end up in New York City cooking?
It was awesome growing up in Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City is beautiful. You have, access to the outdoors, 20 minutes from your house. I grew up camping in southern Utah, 4 or 5 times a year with my family. And honestly, being raised Mormon, there's great values in that religion. There's some stuff about it that's a little kooky, but it's all about being a good person and being there for your family, and I totally respect that, and that's something that I still believe in today. I think you were a little wild because there was that such strong religious pull there. So in high school, partying got a little crazy, mixed with teenage angst. I don't know.
Is that a typical thing that in SLC, the partying is intense because people grew up Mormon, or do you think it's sort of normal high school rebellion? Everyone does a little something.
I think it's a little bit of both, but I had a lot of friends die, actually. 4 or 5 people in my high school died from either drug overdoses or...
Because it's so intense, you want to go to the other end of the spectrum?
I think so. And also, it's kind of for lack of a better word, it's an extreme place. People, you can be skiing in 20 minutes, and so, there's also danger. We knew 2 people who died in avalanches in high school, or there's just, a lot pushing against, it's, the religion pushing against, the outdoor kind of extreme culture, I think, was part of the reason why there was a lot of heavy partying there.
And so, what was that like, being a kid? And, what was your family like?
It was awesome.
Were you a food family? Were you always really interested in cooking growing up? I don't know really.
My mom says
I haven't
I
spent
was.
much time in Utah, but what's the traditional, like, what do you guys eat? You know?
Well, it's big family, so there's a lot of casseroles.
Okay.
And for the Mormon women, there's a lot of Diet Coke. There's a lot of ice cream. There's a lot of sugar consumption because, like, the religion, you don't drink or smoke cigarettes. I don't know if you know anything about that, but...
no, I thought no caffeine.
I think that they kind of, like, no coffee.
Okay.
But so they, like, kind of, like, let that go a little bit, and there's, a ton of Diet Coke that's being consumed. Like, those are... People in Utah will go get a big gulp in the morning instead of having a cup of coffee kind of thing. But from, like, a food perspective, it was, like, a lot of, like, potato casseroles. And, like, my mom made, like, chicken casseroles all the time, and Jell-O, and, like, kind of things that I'm, like, super into now. But I didn't eat a lot of fish. We were landlocked. We had, like, specific nights because Mormons are also big families. I mean, I have 3 siblings, and so we were, like, on the small side. I have, like, other friends that had 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 kids in their family, so you're trying to feed a lot of people kind of quick and probably on a budget. But my mom was kind of a little hippie dip in her parent. She was, by the time she was 23 years old, she had 3 children, so she... was crafty, and she did a lot of canning. She did tons of canning. She made her own granola. She made her own yogurt. She made rolls. Like, my mom was, like, really good in the kitchen as far as, like, giving you that comfort, because she made a lot of the things that we ate, which was really nice. But from, like, an exploring kind of food perspective, I don't think that really existed. I think that if you were to, like, look at it as a big whole thing, the food is probably kind of bland and white.
And so from there, how do you end up getting interested in food? You went to FCI.
Yeah.
How's that transition from Utah to New York?
I basically started cooking. I started working in restaurants when I was like 15 as a busser. My sister was a waitress at a restaurant, and I started working there.
Do you remember which restaurant?
It was called the American Grill.
Okay.
And it was an open kitchen, and so, like, and they just, like, tossed pastas, basically. Like, there was all these, like, different types of pastas, and they had these, like, really bad pita bread and honey butter that you used to get. But I was really fascinated by watching the guys back there. They, like, used to flambe everything, which I think they were just, like, burning off oil. It was probably totally gross.
But it looked so dramatic and cool.
It did. It looked really cool. And so I started prepping there when I was probably 15 years old. I was like, I want to, like, you know, like...
be in the mix
see what's happening. And made huge vats of Italian dressing, like 5-gallon buckets of Italian dressing, and, like, cut through, like... 20 cases of boneless, skinless chicken breasts. But I still was drawn to it. I still thought that it was kind of interesting, and I liked kind of, like, going around and trying all the stuff. So from there, I just really started cooking. And by the time I moved here, I think when I was 22, so fast forward like 7 years later, I had cooked in multiple restaurants in Salt Lake City. I was like a sous chef in a restaurant there. But I just felt like one of my best friends at the time was like, I think that we need to take this to the next level, and we need to go to the French Culinary Institute in New York because my girlfriend lives there, and that's where we should go. So I was like, okay. I mean, I was ready to change. I knew that I didn't want to, like, always be in Salt Lake. So I applied, and I got in. I mean, purely based off of the fact that I had the money to pay for it. It's not like you have to, like, try to get into this school.
Culture shock upon arriving in New York, or were you ready for it?
Yeah, but I was excited. I mean, I was super lonely. Like, I didn't know how to kind of deal with that, but who cares when you're working a full-time job and then going to school at night? Like,
so where did you live?
I lived in Park Slope, actually.
And you worked at Tribeca Grill while you were in school.
Yes.
How did you manage that time-wise? It sounds intense. So you went to school all day and then you went to the restaurant?
The school, the way the program that I chose was a night school, and so I worked all day and then I went to school at night.
So you were working 5 days a week at Tribeca?
Yeah. I made $250 a week, by the way. That's what I made.
Ouch. That is... so your first job in New York is simultaneously while you're going to culinary school. did you internalize what sounds like a pretty drastic struggle financially and from a mental state and say, like, I'm going to overcome this? Or were you loving it and is exactly where you wanted to be? What was the feeling like? Was there a moment of, I'm not going to make it? Was there a moment of, I think that maybe I'm not cut out for this? Or
No.
did you always have it?
I've been told a couple of times that I'm a pretty good plater. I take direction very well. You tell me something once, I'm in. So from that perspective, I felt like I was succeeding. Like you were telling me to do something and I did it. Like I was no stranger to working hard. Like those days didn't seem that long to me. I definitely was probably burning the candle a little bit at both ends, but that kind of felt like how I needed to sustain that, how hard I was feeling like I was working. No, I mean, even I just pushed through, and I kind of feel satisfied that I was accomplishing things. I mean, from Tribeca Grill, I moved to Balthazar, and then in 2 years, I was the sous chef at Balthazar. So I was seeing success pretty early, honestly.
It seems, just the scope of how long you've spent in New York and the fact that you went to culinary school here, have worked in a lot of restaurants, and now are a restaurant owner, you have a unique perspective that I want to mine a little bit. What are the things that are scaring you the most about what is happening in current restaurant landscape? And is there something that you miss that's disappeared from the 90s or the 2000s that you wish could come back around? And if that's too vague of a question, you can just kind of focus on what things are maybe scaring you or upsetting you about the current restaurant landscape.
All right. Well, what I miss is I actually miss being a line cook in the regards of just that responsibility. You just went in, you set up your station, you had a successful night, you didn't have a successful night, you knew how to adjust. That was just really easy to do, and even if you were working really hard, you could find little moments of success and everything. Oh, I really seared that steak well, or ooh, the skin on that fish looks really good. So I often think about going back and just oh, if I could just pick up one night at this cool place, or just to kind of continue to grow that way. That still is something that I miss, is exploring food and growing from a chef's perspective. So that's what I would wish I could have back. What scares me now as a business owner, which is a vastly different thing, is just how hard it is to be a business owner and how hard it is to make ends meet. I mean, I've created multiple revenue streams for myself, and we're still a successful restaurant, but it just seems like things are more and more expensive all the time. I think our insurance just keeps on going up. So it's really hard, much harder, I think, and I also think it's from scale, to be someone of my size. I'm a 40-seat restaurant that has a private dining room, so it can be 60, or it has a backyard, so it can be 60, but there's times when we're just 40 seats. And to try to, afford all of the things that you need to run that restaurant, it's very, very difficult. And so that's what keeps me up at night, and that's the constant challenge that I'm trying to make quick, fast adjustments, but also ones that are kind of thought out. And how do you do that,
Do you see a day in which you will no longer want to be doing this? And if yes, is there something else that you've thought about maybe doing down the line?
Well, we're opening a new space, so I'm actually
You're doubling down.
Yes, I'm doubling down. It's a different concept. It's not a sit-down restaurant, but so we'll see how that whole...
Is that the Dumbo spot?
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's a whole other learning curve, which I'm kind of excited about, knowing the things that I know now.
What's that going to be like? Can you speak to any specifics of what that project is like?
I think that we think what it's going to be like is it's kind of like a takeaway restaurant. It's prepared food, so you can kind of come in, and we have these big display cases with, seasonal salads, and there's a coffee element, and pastries. And then we're trying to kind of maybe incorporate whole animal butchery and have that be kind of the one of the other focuses where you can get briskets or smoked chickens, like kind of by the pound, and then add on all these like super fresh, like high acid salads and stuff to kind of complement those fatty meats. Our chef Mike has like really forged a great relationship with a meat company that we really like, this Happy Valley Meats. So I don't know. So that's a whole other learning curve, and I'm going to try to spin out home delivery in that and just like try all these different things. But yeah, do I see a future where I'm not doing this? I don't know. I mean, I'm a mother now. I have a son. He's 3 years old. And so that really changes perspective a little bit. And I've lived in New York for over 20 years or close to 20 years. And so I'm also like, is it time for a life change in that regard? And I know that I'm here for the next 3 years for sure. But yeah, I think I'm ready to kind of slow down. And I think that might be making books. I'd like to like make books for moms that need some help figuring out how to get a meal on the table.
What do you mean by books? Like
cookbooks.
Recipe books? Cookbooks?
Yeah.
Cool. Go into that. I want to hear more about cookbooks.
I mean, I don't know. I haven't really explored the idea. I just feel like I'm really good at pantry building as a way to diversify the boringness that I think that the ruts. And I mean, personally, I get stuck in ruts cooking at home all the time, and I like have my repertoire. And so like as a chef, like I think that my repertoire is pretty big, but sometimes I'm like, this is really like limited. Like I buy the same stuff every single time I'm at the store. So just trying to help people kind of eat a little bit better and make things kind of quick and just put some healthy food on the table. That's, I think, maybe what I want to try to do.
It's
salad heavy.
It's pretty amazing that even though the United States as a whole has been moving closer to eating organic, eating healthy, eating fresh, that there are still so many bad habits out there.
Yeah.
As a restaurant owner, as someone who's visible, what do you think our responsibility is as restaurant owners beyond just feeding people in our communities? Do you think that we have an additional responsibility to take on all these extras about, teaching and being responsible and being good advocates for various issues? Or do you think that's putting a lot of undue pressure on chefs as we become more visible in the landscape?
I think we definitely have a responsibility to try to provide a little bit of education. I mean, for us, that just starts with sourcing. Like, we try to be source as responsibly as possible. I think that then that just ends up on your plate inevitably. I mean, a carrot that's like grown 15 miles away is going to taste better than a carrot that's grown 1,000 miles away. That's just the truth. So, I don't think that it's like you have to put this undue pressure on it, and it's like something that you need to shove down people's throat, which we've like never done that. But I think that trying to just do it because it's the right thing to do, I think garbage is something that needs to be addressed, like how we try to compost more. I think that that's something that we should really try to do and recycle as a business, and it's kind of difficult, unfortunately. So, yeah, I think that in being someplace that, again, like going back to that, like not stagnating, I think you just kind of constantly have to adjust and continue to try. You just have to continue to move forward, because otherwise you're just kind of doing the same thing. And who wants to do that, right?
Totally. Jean, thank you so much for being here on the line.
Thanks.
Appreciate you sharing all your stories with us and all your exciting new projects. Tell everyone where they can find you at Vinegar Hill. What's the address of the restaurant?
72 Hudson Avenue in Brooklyn, New York.
Open 7 days a week?
7 days a week, brunch on the weekends.
Cool. Everyone, please go check out Vinegar Hill House if you've never been. It's a wonderful restaurant. Jean, thank you again. Everybody, head over to heritageradionetwork.org, where you can download this episode and all the other episodes of The Line. And we'll see you next Tuesday, 11 a.m. here on Heritage Radio.
Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. For our freshest content and to hear about exclusive events, subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at heritage_radio. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization driving conversations to make the world a better, fairer, more delicious place. And we couldn't do it without support from listeners like you. Want to be a part of the food world's most innovative community? Rate the shows you like, tell your friends, and please join our community by becoming a member. Just click on the beating heart at the top right of our homepage. Thanks for listening.
I want to tell you about a new podcast called Amuse News. Publishing multiple days a week, Amuse News is your source for food news, interviews from around the food world, and more. On the show, we'll be engaging with food storytellers, from chefs to advocates to people working in the field, and many more. Find Amuse News wherever you get your podcasts. Amuse News is a destination for everyone who's looking for a new, insightful look into the world of food.